Okay, so how to generate research ideas? Personally, I think there are many different ways to generate research ideas. Obviously, reading a lots of research papers, going to conferences, attending presentations can be very useful to see what people are currently doing and what is currently published. And also sometimes can help you coming up with other ideas if you think sometimes a paper does something that, well, you could have done differently, or under certain scenarios there could be different outcomes. But I would say personally, I arrive at my research ideas usually in a different way. So I think I have like several, if I look at my own research, several papers that started completely different, not from reading literature, but just other strategies. And the first one I would say is just to talk to companies. When I just started my career as an assistant professor, and I was thinking about new research ideas, I got in touch with some startup companies, and we just chatted. What were their issues? What were their problems? And one thing, for instance, that they were saying, this was a company that designed viral marketing campaigns. One problem that they had was how can we forecast how many participants we get in a campaign? And they argued that it was impossible. There are no mathematical models or no statistical models that can predict how many people will watch a video. And of course, I got quite intrigued. My background is in econometrics, and I thought, if you have so much data, you should be able to forecast, you should be able to predict this. So I started digging into the data. They shared the data with me, and this is how I started my research idea. So basically, how can we forecast the number of participants in a viral marketing campaign? And this ended up in a publication in marketing science. And based on that, I started several follow-up projects on the topic of viral marketing. So I think the first thing we can do is to talk to companies. Another sometimes methodology that I have used or has turned out to be successful, and it was maybe not strategically used, is just to start exploring the data, or when you go through data, you come up sometimes with ideas because you face some problems in the data. So to give another example, so when I moved to Hong Kong, I got in touch with a local ice cream store with my colleague over here. And in the ice cream store, we were allowed to set up all kind of field experiments. So that's what we did. We changed the display of the different flavors of ice cream. We did some price promotions, basically lots of different manipulations. And then I thought, okay, we collect the data. We know exactly the sales. We know what customers choose, and we just analyze it. And when I got the data, it's like choice data. When people choose ice cream or gelato, they choose different scoops. So to give an example, this ice cream store had 20 different flavors, and customers could choose one flavor, two flavors, three flavors, or combinations of them. And so it's kind of simple choice data. That's what I thought. But when I started analyzing the data, I couldn't come up with a choice model that could actually deal with this kind of problem. And then it turned out, actually, it's a very challenging topic. And then I start to come up or think about a model how to analyze this data, which actually turned into just a choice model unrelated to the field experiment that is published in IJRM. A third methodology that I've actually used to come up with a research idea is just listening to students, so undergrad students. When I worked at Erasmus University, I was supervising several master students, and every year there were about maybe 10 to 15 students I was supervising. And many of the projects, of course, are very standard. They work for some company, or they just come up with their own marketing problems, and they do a standard thesis. And you think, okay, yeah, just supervise, give some feedback, and then in the end they can defend. But sometimes these students have actually really, really good ideas. They might not be fully developed into an idea that you can publish or that you can work on yourself, but maybe extend it. So one of the students that once came to me, she said, okay, I have an idea, and that idea was about related to marriages and brand alliances. So she saw a brand alliance as a kind of a marriage or a couple that comes together. And she thought that it could be interesting to look at the personalities of brands and relate this to personalities of successful marriages or successful partnerships in human relationships. And I thought, hey, this is actually pretty cool. I have no idea about social psychology. So at that time, I contacted one of my colleagues, Bram van den Burg, and he's a social psychologist specialized in this topic. And I discussed this with him, and they thought, whoa, this is really cool. And the student said, okay, I want to have a high grade. So then we said, okay, well, if you want to have a high grade, then maybe you need to do some extra efforts, work hard so that we get also useful data for our own project. Surprisingly, actually, this topic turned out into a marketing science paper. The student is even co-author on the paper. Very completely different topic that I had been working on, but just because, okay, the student had a cool idea, maybe you can develop it into something interesting. So I think now I've discussed like 3 different ideas. My fourth idea or fourth approach, or maybe it's not really, that I think was more like a strategy that you can sometimes do to generate idea, is just to take breaks. So often when we are thinking about we need to come up with new ideas, we start to, well, reading papers, we get a bit nervous, we get a bit stressed because we need to have a project, right? And then sometimes you just get blocked, you don't get any ideas. And usually we are, I think there's also research on that, we are more creative if you just take a break, if we are not doing anything. And I think this is not really as an example that I'm going to give, is not really about a research idea, but it's more about a problem that I solved in an own research topic. So when I was doing my PhD, actually close towards my defense, I presented my research project at several universities. And at one point, one of the audience asked some feedback, or they asked basically the papers that I used to estimate a model. And one day later, this colleague came back, and this person said, I think the methodology that you're using is incorrect. And then, of course, in the beginning, said, no, that's probably not the case. But then I looked into it in more detail, and it turned out that this person was right. And my entire thesis was based on this methodology. So 3 essays, they used this methodology, and the person was right. I realized this methodology is statistically invalid. So then I got, of course, very nervous, very stressed. How can I solve this? I might not be able to defend my thesis. And then actually when I was sleeping, I suddenly woke up. So I took actually not really a break, but I was forced to take a break. And suddenly I thought, okay, maybe I can solve this problem in this way. I make a quick note. And then the next day I looked into this, and in the end, yes, that was a very good idea that I was not actively thinking, but passively, by taking some breaks, I got up with this idea. So I think sometimes just taking a break, doing some other activities, in the back of your head, you're probably still thinking about it, and you might become more creative, think about it from a different way, and come up with new research ideas.